In my previous life, Pablo was a distinguished young military commander, celebrated for his bravery. I, on the other hand, was ordinary, only becoming his wife by chance through a childhood marriage arrangement. When kidnappers aimed their guns at both me and Zoe, he chose to save her without hesitation. I was shot through the heart and died at the age of 27. In this life, I've initiated a divorce to set him free and have decided to start anew, dedicating myself to international medical aid work overseas. Yet, he seems to be in agony with regret, blocking my path and pleading for another chance. Chapter 1. Julia, are you sure about this? The conditions in the war zone are harsh, and your life could be at risk at any moment. My mentor cautioned. I nodded firmly. Don't worry. I've thought this through thoroughly, I assured him. He sighed, adjusting his glasses, and pulled out a document from his drawer. This is the contract for the International Medical Aid Team. Once you sign, there's no turning back. In 1 month, someone will come to pick you up, he informed me as I signed the document. Leaving his office, I looked down at my slightly bulging belly, momentarily dazed. In my past life, I married Pablo when I was just 20. He was often away with the military, leaving me at home to care for his parents and our daughter. Then he brought home a young woman. This is Zoe. She saved my life. She's a savior to our family. Julia, please treat her well, he said. Zoe was beautiful, gentle, and competent. Pablo found her a job as his secretary. They were always seen together, mistaken by many as a couple, a match made in heaven. Even his parents were charmed by her, delighted beyond measure. One evening, as I was washing dishes, I accidentally overheard my mother-in-law caressing her hand, saying, "If only Zoe were my daughter-in-law." You and Pablo, a perfect match. Just met a bit late, she added. Zoe smiled coyly, glancing triumphantly in my direction. Even our daughter became her avid fan, convinced that I was inferior in every way. She once yelled at me in frustration, "What era are you living in with arranged marriages? You and Dad were never meant to be. You're not good enough for him," she muttered. I wish Aunt Zoe were my mom. Later, Zoe and I were kidnapped by one of Pablo's enemies. When he arrived, the kidnapper forced him to choose only one of us to take with him. A gunshot rang out, and my heart was pierced. I fell into a pool of blood, and with my dying vision, I saw him protect Zoe with his body. Snapping back to the present, I placed my hands on my belly. Now, 2 months pregnant. If she didn't want me as her mother, then in this life, I would grant her wish. I headed to the hospital. When the doctor found out I wanted to terminate my pregnancy, he tried to persuade me otherwise. However, seeing my resolve, he eventually gave up. In this life, I will not let anyone become a stumbling block to my rebirth. Soon, it will be the day when Pablo brings Zoe back. I stayed in the hospital for 2 days before returning home. My mother-in-law, inquisitive about my whereabouts, pressed for an explanation. I evaded by saying I was at the hospital doing an internship with my teacher. She expressed her displeasure, saying, "You're married now. You should stay at home and take care of us, not keep running off to the hospital. What use is it learning all that? You could never become a doctor anyway." A woman's virtue lies in her lack of knowledge. Yet, I clearly remember she never spoke of Zoe in this manner. Chapter 2. Just like in my previous life, it wasn't long before Pablo brought Zoe back. Unlike before, I wasn't waiting at home for him. Instead, I was at the hospital. When I got home, it was just in time for dinner. Today was New Year's Eve, a night I used to manage every year. But this year, unable to reach me, my mother-in-law had prepared a lavish dinner herself. "You know how to come back," she remarked with a displeased look. Seeing the tension, my father-in-law quietly intervened. "Let's just sit down and eat." I took a seat next to Pablo, feeling strangely detached. He pointed at Zoe and introduced her. "This is Zoe, the woman who saved my life." I nodded and picked up my chopsticks to start eating. Julia, Zoe doesn't know anyone here, so she'll be staying with us for now. You'll treat her well, won't you?" he added. I picked up a piece of braised pork and placed it in my bowl, meeting his gaze as I did so. "Pablo, don't trouble Julia. From now on, I'll take care of everyone. Don't you know what I'm capable of? I'll take very good care of your parents. Don't worry, Zoe said with a playful smile to Pablo. Aw, you really have a way with words. I like you more and more, my mother-in-law exclaimed, obviously charmed. Here, have some more fish. I bought it especially for you today, she continued, placing a piece of fish in Zoe's bowl. Pablo quickly intervened. Mom, Zoe doesn't eat cilantro. My mother-in-law looked down to see a bit of cilantro on the fish. Oh, take this piece then, and I'll pick another for Zoe. Watching them interact so harmoniously, like a real family, made me feel truly out of place. Perhaps sensing something, Pablo picked a shrimp from a dish and placed it in my bowl. Julia, I'm often not at home, and you've been working hard taking care of the house and my parents this year. This shrimp is my own recipe. Try it, he urged. I stared at the shrimp in my bowl and then back at him, finding the situation absurd. Seeing no response from me, he looked puzzled. What's wrong, Pablo? I'm allergic to shrimp, didn't you know? I asked. He froze, taken aback, breaking the awkward silence. My mother-in-law scoffed. Allergies. Schmallergies. People in the past would have been grateful to have shrimp to eat. Don't ruin everyone's mood during the new year. The disparity in how she treated me compared to Zoe was glaring. In my last life, I endured 5 years of submissive caregiving for Pablo's sick mother for this man. I must have been mad. I threw down my chopsticks and stood up, staring at my mother-in-law as I enunciated each word. Mom, if you're uneducated, I can educate you. Forcing someone to eat something they're allergic to, knowing full well they have an allergy, and causing severe anaphylactic shock. Do you realize that's intentional homicide? Julia, is that how you talk to your mother? Pablo's father, who had been pretending to be invisible, finally couldn't hold back and scolded me. Apologize to your mother immediately. I laughed. My mother? What mother? My mother has been dead for a long time. Oh, if I remember correctly, she died saving you. At my words, Pablo's father faltered for a moment, his expression dazed. Then he fell silent and sat down. I didn't want to deal with them anymore and turned to leave. Suddenly, Pablo grabbed my wrist. Julia, apologize. He was furious. I forcefully shook off his grip and looked him straight in the eye. What? Have you really gotten so used to it that you think I'm your family's servant? How long has it been since the founding of the new China? Did your family somehow miss out on the reform and opening up? In an instant, shocked gazes turned toward me. Chapter 3. In the past, I always treated them with excessive deference. Never like I did today. I was just too angry, feeling that my past efforts were worthless. Their shocked expressions didn't surprise me. I ignored them and left the table, returning to my room. Hours later, when it had quieted outside, there was a knock on my door. I got up and opened it to find Pablo standing there. He handed me a cup of warm milk. Julia, I just heated up some milk. Have a bit, please. No need. Drink it yourself, I replied and was about to close the door. He stopped the door with his hand, looking at me helplessly. Stop being petulant. You need to take care of yourself. For the baby in your belly. Today, we were too much, and I apologize to you. Hearing him mention the baby, I looked down at my now flat belly and forced a bitter smile. Pablo, there are fireworks outside. Can you come out and watch them with me? Zoe popped out from behind him, excitedly pointing at the fireworks outside and coaxing him. Pablo paused, then nodded gently at her. All right, I'll take you to watch the fireworks. Zoe, getting the answer she wanted, happily put on her coat to get ready to go out. Pablo was about to leave but suddenly turned around. Julia, do you want to come too? Zoe reluctantly tugged at his sleeve and muttered, Pablo, better not bring Julia along. She's pregnant, and it's not good if the fireworks explode near her. He gave me a troubled look and agreed, that's true. I shook my head. You go. Have fun. A look of guilt appeared on his face. Then you rest well at home. Mom said it's time for your prenatal checkup. I'll accompany you tomorrow morning. Before I could even respond, he was hurriedly pulled out the door by Zoe. Prenatal checkup? Humph. Back in my room, I received a message from my teacher. Julia, I've submitted your name. In half a month, you'll join the Moritz Medical Rescue Team. It's winter there now, so prepare some warm gear for any emergencies. The next day, I surprisingly slept in until 10 before getting up. When I opened the door, the house was empty. I grabbed something to eat and prepared to go to the mall to buy myself a down jacket. After receiving the message from my teacher yesterday, I went through my wardrobe and realized that over the years I had hardly bought any clothes for myself. In the past, I pitied him for earning money, and almost all the living expenses he gave me were spent on household needs, rarely on myself. Thinking about it now, it was foolish. At noon, I took a taxi alone to the mall and headed straight for the counter. But just as I entered, I heard an exclamation. This dress looks so beautiful. I looked over and saw Zoe and Pablo. They were still wearing the same clothes as yesterday. Zoe was holding a lace, figure-hugging dress in front of her. Pablo, do I look good in this? Pablo nodded. Beautiful. Zoe hesitated. Isn't it too expensive? It's over 8,000. Pablo smiled, took a credit card out of his pocket, and handed it to the salesperson. Wrap it up for me, please. The salesperson, beaming, took the card and complimented Zoe. Your husband is really good to you. All of this unfolded before my eyes. Suddenly, I remembered that from the time I met him until now, he seems to have never given me anything. Chapter 4. It wasn't until he had paid and turned around to see me at the door that his smile instantly froze on his face. Julia, what are you doing here? For a moment, I felt like teasing him. I glanced at my watch. Didn't you say you were going to accompany me to the prenatal checkup? You didn't come home last night, so I had to come out and look for you myself. His face turned pale instantly. He hurriedly explained, don't get me wrong. We stayed out late last night after the fireworks, and we didn't want to disturb your sleep, so we stayed out for the night. Yes, Julia, don't think too much about it. Zoe chimed in. I glanced at the dress she was holding. Ah, this dress is a gift from Pablo to celebrate my new job. Pablo helped me get a job, coming back as his assistant. Julia, you don't mind, do you? I could clearly hear the provocation in her words. I smiled. Why would I? You are his benefactor. After all, it's only right. Pablo, hearing this, gave me a relieved smile. Julia, I knew you would understand. Looking at him, I found it ridiculous. I'll drop Zoe off first, then go to the hospital with you. We went to the mall parking lot, where Zoe headed straight for the passenger seat. She opened the door and sat down smoothly. Pablo started the engine, and seeing that I hadn't gotten in yet, called out, get in. I glanced at the back seat, piled with stuff. He then paused, flustered, and started to clear it up. Oh, I forgot Pablo bought me so much stuff. It's all filled up. I told him I don't need so much, but he still thinks I'm lacking this and that. Sometimes, I really can't argue with him. Zoe boasted in a complaining tone. For a moment, even I was a bit dazed. Between us, was I the one who was actually the unnecessary third party? After Pablo finished clearing up, he stood in front of me, his expression somewhat awkward. Julia, after the checkup, let me also accompany you to buy some things. It's almost New Year. You should also get some new things. I wasn't sure if he said this out of guilt or something else, but I wasn't moved at all. I opened the car door and got in. Let's go back. On the road, Zoe chattered nonstop. Occasionally, Pablo would be amused by her, bursting into laughter. Suddenly realizing I was still in the back, he awkwardly restrained his smile. They discussed experiences they had shared, excluding me from the conversation. As we passed the city's amusement park, she said, Pablo, do you remember when we first met? I told you I'd never been to an amusement park, and you said you'd take me someday. Pablo, holding the steering wheel, still turned to nod at her. Sure, I'll take you when we have time. Pablo, I also want to travel, to see the sunlit Golden Mountain. Okay, I'll go with you. Pablo, I want to eat roast duck tonight. Okay, I'll get it for you tonight. It was at this moment I realized Pablo was actually such a tender and attentive person, a side of him I had never seen or known before. Thinking back to the excuses I had made for his coldness towards me, I now felt as though I had been slapped in the face. Every word they spoke seemed to mock me for being a joke just by sitting here. Zoe turned around to look at me, feigning an apology. Julia, sorry. I forgot you were here too. Pablo and I usually interact like this. Don't mind us. Chapter 5. Upon returning home, Pablo's parents were already back. Upon seeing me, my mother-in-law scolded, "You're pregnant and still running around everywhere. It's okay if you get hurt, but don't let anything happen to my precious grandchild." Pablo's father chimed in, "Look, Julia, you should stop thinking about being a doctor. You're not cut out for it. Just stay home, take care of the child, and look after us. No need for any more nonsense." Pablo, changing his shoes at the door, agreed. "Yeah, Julia, listen to mom and dad. Stop going to the hospital. Women don't need to work." I stared at Zoe behind him and asked him, "Oh? Then why are you still getting Zoe a job?" He paused, then answered, "Zoe is different from you. She's more independent. Besides, her job is as my assistant. She can be with me all the time. What about me being your assistant?" My words stunned everyone present, with varied expressions. "What? We're husband and wife. Wouldn't it make more sense for me to be with you every day as your assistant?" "Julia, stop making a scene," Pablo said helplessly. "Making a scene? Am I really the one making a scene? Julia, are you upset with me because I gave birth to Pablo? If you dislike me so much, then I should just leave." Zoe suddenly cried out, previously quiet. After speaking, she bent down to grab her bag and headed for the door. Pablo and his mother quickly held her back. "Zoe, don't leave." "Pablo, I can't be the reason your family breaks apart. I know she hates me, so I'll just leave." "Julia didn't mean that, right?" Pablo pulled her back, turning to me, expecting me to nod in agreement. I smiled. "That's exactly what I mean, Pablo. Either Zoe or I must stay in this house." He froze, astonished. "What's gotten into you? You weren't like this before," he said, disappointed. I didn't want to waste any more words. "Pablo, let's get a divorce. Since you can't bear to part with Zoe, I'll give you your freedom." With a clang, Pablo's father smashed a teacup to the ground. "Nonsense. If you two divorce, how will our neighbors look at me afterward? Let her leave. I'd like to see where she can go. She's pregnant and no one will want her after this," his mother said while grabbing Zoe's hand and jumping angrily. I glanced at her, finding her incessant chatter dizzying. Pablo, hearing this, thought his mother made sense. "Yeah, Julia, where else could you go after leaving us? Don't speak out of anger. You still have our child in your belly. Don't act impulsively." He reached out to pull me. I stepped back, distancing myself from him. "The child? You still dream of me selflessly continuing your lineage, then serving your selfish family for a lifetime? Even slaves weren't treated as badly as me, right? I've already had an abortion. Forget about it." I pulled out the abortion report from my bag and threw it at them. His mother frantically picked it up, her face turning even paler as she read it. Clutching her chest, she yelled at me, "Julia, how could you abort my grandson?" "Why?" "Because the child was in my body." I then looked at Zoe, who appeared frail. "You all want a grandson so badly. Why not have Zoe give birth to one for your family?" "Julia, don't talk nonsense. Zoe and I aren't like that," Pablo retorted. "Oh, I forgot. I overheard by accident that Miss Zoe can't get pregnant." "Indeed, she can't bear you a child. In a past life, I had seen Zoe's medical report by chance." She looked at me incredulously. How did you know that?" His mother broke down in tears. Seeing her reaction, Pablo and his father finally believed I wasn't lying to them. Snatching the report, Pablo opened his mouth, speechless for a long time before finally saying, "You really did it." Pablo's father, overwhelmed with anger, fell to the ground, banging his cane on the floor. He lamented, "A calamity has befallen our family." Chapter 6. Amidst the chaos, I grabbed my suitcase and headed for the door. Pablo chased after me and blocked the doorway. "Julia, can you stop making a scene? I can overlook the abortion for now." His shamelessness nearly made me laugh. "Pablo, did I really give you too much face before, that you've become so shameless?" Now, it is I who want a divorce. Not me begging you for forgiveness. I pulled out a divorce agreement from my bag that I had prepared earlier and threw it at him. I've already signed my name. You do the same quickly. I don't want to have anything to do with you or your family anymore. It seemed like at that moment, he finally realized that I was serious about divorcing him. He stopped me again. I pushed him away forcefully, cursing, Pablo, are you sick? You married me only because my mom saved your dad, right? You never loved me. So what are you pretending for now? Besides, once we're divorced, you and Zoe can be together officially, right? Julia, you've got it all wrong. Zoe and I are close only because she once saved my life. She has no relatives left in this world, and I feel it's my duty to be good to her. That's all. Zoe came running out and stood behind him, just in time to hear this. Her face gradually turned pale. Pablo turned around and saw her. Stunned. Pablo, I'd think better of you if you just admitted you're a jerk who can't look away from others while eating from his own bowl. I said sarcastically. If you don't sign the divorce agreement, I will sue. Rest assured, I will definitely divorce you. Seizing the moment, I quickly hailed a taxi and left. I found a hotel to stay temporarily, with less than half a month left until I leave. This half month away from home finally allowed me to breathe freely and do the things I enjoy. I decided to make up for what I had lost before. So, I found an island and decided to go there alone for a while. Once everything was prepared, I headed to the airport with my luggage. Before boarding the plane, I made sure to block all of Pablo's family members. A good vacation should not be ruined by them. I enjoyed myself on the island for over a week. It was only when I received a call from my teacher that I realized I had only 2 days left before joining the rescue team. He had booked a return flight for me and asked me to meet him at the hospital. Chapter 7. After leaving my luggage at the hotel, I hurried to the hospital. Just at the entrance, a hand grabbed me. Turning around, I saw it was Pablo. Seeing me, his eyes lit up with surprise. Julia, it's really you. You have no idea how long I've been looking for you. You blocked me, and I couldn't contact you. As he spoke, he lowered his head and gave a bitter smile. I realized that once I couldn't call you, I had no other way to find you. I don't even know if you have any friends. It seems I really didn't care about you enough in the past. I was in a hurry and didn't want to be delayed by him. I shook off his hand. Pablo, did you forget the divorce agreement I gave you? Stop pretending to care now. You know very well how you've treated me. With that, I started to walk away. He followed me. Julia, can you give me another chance? My mother is in the hospital now, and these days taking care of her there made me realize how hard it was for you every time she and Dad were sick. You were so tired taking care of her, and yet you still had to rush back to cook for Dad. I've realized how hard it is to take care of this home. Between the lines, I caught his message. Seeing how much thinner he looked compared to before, I guessed that without me, his free nanny, all the responsibilities had fallen on him, and he had suffered a lot. Every word he said seemed to tell me that he wouldn't last much longer without me coming back. I smiled. What's wrong? You're having such a hard time. Doesn't your Zoe help you at all? His expression instantly turned cold. Zoe hasn't been feeling well lately. I nodded. She's smart, isn't she? If I had known, I would have pretended to be sick in the past, so I wouldn't end up as your family's free labor for years. My words left him speechless. But I know you. Look, you still came back today. You can't bear to see me suffer. Julia, I know you mentioned divorce just to vent. I've thought a lot these days, and I promise to care more for you, to take better care of you. Can we make up? Come home with me? I couldn't take it anymore. I yelled at him. Pablo, get away from me. Stop being so delusional. I feel sick seeing anyone from your family. If you want to keep some dignity, don't stand in my way. I didn't come here for you, and certainly not because of your family. The world doesn't revolve around your family. I don't care if your parents are sick or dying. Don't bother me with it. If you have a conscience, take care of them yourself. If not, just leave them on the street. Perhaps he had never seen this side of me, and he was stunned for several minutes. Disbelieving, he said, then why did you come to the hospital? Suddenly, as if relieved, He added, "Forget about being a doctor. You can't become one just by hanging around the hospital." Suddenly, an authoritative voice came from behind. "Julia, why haven't you come in yet? We need to confirm your details one last time for the rescue team." I turned around, and my teacher and his assistant stood behind me. I nodded and apologized. "I'll be right there, Professor." Then I turned back to Pablo and warned him, "Keep your distance. Don't bother me anymore." Chapter 8. What rescue team? He asked in pursuit. "Does it concern you?" I rolled my eyes and ran towards Professor Hu. I verified my information one last time, and the professor handed me the medical aid pass, saying solemnly, "Julia, on behalf of the International Medical Aid Team, I welcome you to join us." The next morning, a young man knocked on my hotel room door. He said, "Doctor, I'm here to pick you up." I followed him onto the plane. From then on, I started 3 years of medical aid work in a war-torn region in the Middle East. During this period, I witnessed countless lives lost and miraculous survivals. Every time I saw a patient successfully rescued, I felt grateful and thankful that fate gave me a second chance at life, and I hadn't wasted it on unworthy matters. 3 years later, I received a call from my teacher. He said, "There's an opportunity to study in Germany for 4 years. Are you interested?" I looked back at the ruins and the wounded behind me. My medical skills were still not particularly advanced, and the German healthcare system was excellent. After studying there, I would definitely improve significantly. I nodded in agreement. "I'll go." As we were about to hang up, he hesitated. "I found it odd, Professor. Is there something else?" "Julia, there's something I never told you. The day after you left, your ex-husband came looking for me. He asked where you went, and I told him. He seemed very upset, kept saying it was impossible, that you couldn't have left him. He made a scene in my office for a long time and even damaged some of my things. Eventually, a woman named Zoe took him away. I initially thought he was really heartbroken about your departure, but a few months later, he openly started dating that woman. I thought that was the end of it, so I didn't mention it to you. But a few days ago, I heard some big news. He suddenly gossiped that Zoe was arrested, and Pablo has been suspended and is also being taken in for investigation." "What?" I was surprised. He slowly added, "That Zoe, she's a traitor. She approached Pablo with an agenda from the start. That whole family was foolishly deceived by her. Pablo not only lost his job but might also face other penalties. It's a good thing you decisively divorced that fool back then. I recalled that in my previous life, before I died. This had not happened. Had Zoe not succeeded last time?" I shuddered. Fortunately, she was caught this time. As for Pablo, he got what he deserved. After wrapping up my work here, I flew to Germany to start my studies. 4 years is neither long nor short. I lived every day to the fullest and indeed learned a lot. On the day I finished my studies, I received an award from the academy. They told me that I was an outstanding doctor. In the blink of an eye, it had been 7 years since I left. My teacher invited me back home. He was getting old and said, "Julia, you are my best student. I will be at peace handing over the hospital to you." Chapter 9. On my first day on the job, after the meeting, my assistant took me back to the office. As we passed the inpatient department, I was suddenly stopped by a familiar yet shocked voice. "Julia?" I turned around to see my mother-in-law's astonished expression. "Is it really you?" She excitedly tried to come over. "Where have you been all these years? Why didn't you contact us? We've been looking everywhere for you." My assistant intervened. "Ma'am, please don't get agitated." However, she brushed off the assistant's hand, shouting, "She's my daughter-in-law. What does it have to do with you?" Suddenly, a man in a security uniform ran up behind her and restrained her. "Mom, you just had surgery. You can't get agitated." Our eyes met, and I recognized the man, now much haggard, as Pablo, whom I hadn't seen in 7 years. He recognized me and immediately looked down and turned away. My mother-in-law was still shouting at me, calling me her daughter-in-law. My assistant stepped forward to interrupt her. "Ma'am, this is our director, not your daughter-in-law. Please show some respect." Hearing this, Pablo stiffly turned around, His gaze fixed on me. Julia, you really became a doctor. I nodded to my assistant to let her know she didn't need to intervene. I stepped forward and extended my hand to Pablo. Long time no see. He hesitated for a few seconds, giving a bitter smile, and reached out his hand. Long time. Director. He escorted his mother back to her room, and then we went to the hospital's cafe. He told me his father had died 2 years ago, at a time when his mother was hospitalized and he was taken away for questioning, leaving only his father at home. He fell down the stairs, and no one found him until much later when a neighbor noticed something was off and called the police. Since then, my mother's health has deteriorated. She recently had surgery, but the doctors have said it's unlikely she will fully recover. She might not have much time left. Her mental state isn't great either. Sometimes she's confused and forgets many things. So she kept calling you daughter-in-law. Don't mind it. After speaking, he lowered his head and covered his face with both hands. Julia, I really regret. If only I had made a better life with you from the start. If I hadn't brought Zoe back home, would everything be different today? I sipped my coffee. Pablo, you only regret how you treated me because you're not having a good time now. Essentially, you don't really feel guilty towards me. With that, I stood up ready to leave. Since that's the case, I think we have nothing to talk about. I've already paid for the coffee. He hastily tried to hold me back. No, Julia, I truly feel guilty towards you, and I'm too ashamed to ask for your forgiveness. Today I asked you here just to personally say I'm sorry. I smiled. I don't need your apology, Pablo. Don't think too highly of yourself. After I left you, I discovered there are so many more worthwhile things to do in this world. I was foolish before, trapped in a small world, satisfied with the crumbs of happiness you gave me. In your home, I lost myself. Fortunately, I chose not to continue, and I created different surprises for my life. Without listening to him any further, I walked out of the cafe without looking back. Pablo, we're no longer on the same path. Let the past be past. I am already embracing a new life.